Transparency and accountability are also crucial elements of democracy. In a democratic society, those in power are held accountable for their actions. Transparency ensures that citizens can access information about government decisions, public spending, and policies. This openness allows people to make informed choices, to challenge decisions they believe are unjust, and to demand better governance. Accountability means that government officials are answerable to the people. If they fail to fulfill their responsibilities or abuse their power, they must face consequences. This accountability ensures that democracy does not become a system of unchecked authority, but one in which leaders are held to high standards of integrity and respect for the people they serve. Democracy requires the protection of pluralism and diversity. In a democratic society, it is essential that all voices are heard, especially those of marginalized and minority groups. Democracy flourishes when individuals are free to express their ideas, to challenge the status quo, and to advocate for changes that reflect the diverse needs and perspectives of society. Whether it is ethnic, religious, or ideological diversity, a democracy should embrace differences and ensure that the voices of all citizens are represented and respected. When minority viewpoints are allowed to exist and flourish, democracy becomes stronger, more resilient, and more inclusive. The importance of education in a democracy cannot be overstated. An informed citizenry is essential to the functioning of a democracy. People must have access to the knowledge and tools they need to understand the issues that affect their lives and to make informed decisions about governance. Education equips citizens with the ability to think critically, to engage in public discourse, and to advocate for the policies and changes that align with their values and interests. A democracy that fails to provide quality education to its people undermines its own strength and legitimacy. Democracy, though powerful, is fragile. It requires constant nurturing and protection from those who would seek to undermine it for personal gain or to concentrate power in the hands of a few. The survival of democracy depends on the active engagement of citizens, the protection of individual rights and freedoms, and the maintenance of transparency and accountability. A healthy democracy requires that people remain vigilant and committed to the values of equality, justice, and fairness. We must resist the temptation to allow divisions or interests to undermine the unity of purpose that democracy demands. If we allow ourselves to become complacent or apathetic, we risk weakening the very system that ensures our freedoms and rights. In the end, democracy is not a perfect system, but it is the best means we have to ensure that every voice is heard and that decisions are made in the interest of the people. It is the cornerstone upon which a fair, just, and inclusive society is built. By upholding democracy's principles, participation, accountability, transparency, and the protection of rights, we can ensure that democracy continues to serve as the foundation for progress, prosperity, and peace. Respect for human dignity is one of the most fundamental principles that should guide our actions, policies, and interactions as individuals and as a society. It is the recognition that every person, regardless of their background, beliefs, or status, possesses inherent worth and deserves to be treated with dignity, honor, and respect. This concept is not merely an abstract idea, but a core value that must shape how we approach issues of justice, equality, and the rights of others. When we respect human dignity, we create a world that values each person as unique, capable, and deserving of opportunities to thrive. It forms the foundation of a just society, where individuals are not reduced to their circumstances, but are recognized for their humanity. Human dignity is intrinsic to the human experience, meaning that it is not contingent on wealth, power, appearance, or any other attribute that society may use to measure worth. It is a universal value that transcends borders, cultures, and ideologies. Regardless of our race, ethnicity, gender, nationality, or religion, we are all human beings entitled to the same rights, freedoms, and protections. Respect for human dignity means understanding that every person's life has value, regardless of how they may be perceived by others or how society may classify them. In a world where injustice and inequality often prevail, Affirming human dignity means fighting for the recognition of each individual's worth, even in the face of adversity. In many societies, human dignity is under threat by poverty, violence, discrimination, and exploitation. When people are deprived of basic human rights such as access to healthcare, education, and fair treatment, their dignity is compromised. Poverty, in particular, can strip individuals of their sense of self-worth, as it forces them to live in conditions where their basic needs are not met. This not only affects their physical well-being, but also their psychological and emotional health, as being in poverty often results in feelings of helplessness, shame, and exclusion. Likewise, those who experience racial, gender, or religious discrimination are denied the recognition of their full humanity. When societies or individuals deny another person's dignity, they perpetuate cycles of exclusion, inequality, and violence that prevent people from realizing their full potential. Respect for human dignity requires that we actively work to protect the rights of others and ensure that they are treated with fairness and kindness. It is easy to overlook the importance of treating others with respect in our daily lives, especially when we are caught up in the busyness of life, or when we allow stereotypes and biases to shape our interactions. But the recognition of human dignity must go beyond mere politeness. It requires us to actively affirm the worth of others, to stand up against injustice, and to challenge systems that dehumanize people. It means engaging in actions that promote social justice, equality, and fairness, ensuring that everyone has access to opportunities that allow them to lead fulfilling lives. Respect for human dignity is also central to the protection of human rights. Human rights are the basic freedoms and entitlements that every person is inherently entitled to simply because they are human. These include the right to life, liberty, and security, the right to be free from torture and cruel treatment, the right to a fair trial, the right to education, and the right to participate in the political and cultural life of one society. The protection of human rights is, in essence, the protection of human dignity. When rights are violated, dignity is diminished. Therefore, it is essential that societies establish and enforce laws that safeguard these rights, and that individuals, communities, and governments work to ensure that the rights of all are upheld. Moreover, respect for human dignity extends to how we view and treat marginalized and vulnerable groups in society. Those who face discrimination, whether based on race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or socioeconomic status, are often subject to degradation and mistreatment that undermine their dignity. For instance, the elderly, people with disabilities, refugees, and the homeless are frequently marginalized, their needs ignored or dismissed. The struggle for human dignity is inseparable from the fight for equality and social inclusion. Recognizing and respecting the dignity of these individuals requires us to create systems and communities that promote inclusivity, accessibility, and fairness, ensuring that all people are able to participate fully in society without fear of discrimination or persecution. In the global context, respect for human dignity should guide international relations and the way in which nations treat one another. In times of conflict and war, it is easy for the basic principles of dignity and respect to be overlooked, and people often become victims of violence, exploitation, and dehumanization. However, international law and organizations such as the United Nations have recognized that respect for human dignity is essential to global peace and stability. Efforts to protect human rights, provide humanitarian aid, and resolve conflicts must be rooted in the recognition that every person, regardless of nationality or background, is deserving of dignity and respect. Countries that uphold human dignity create the conditions for cooperation, mutual understanding, and peace, while those that violate human rights foster division, hatred, and resentment. At the individual level, respect for human dignity is reflected in how we treat others in our personal relationships, workplaces, and communities. Small actions of kindness and respect can have a profound impact on a person's sense of self-worth. Taking the time to listen to someone, showing empathy for their struggles, or offering support in times of need are all ways in which we can demonstrate respect for their dignity. It also means standing up against harmful practices such as bullying, harassment, and abuse, which seek to diminish the value of others. In this way, the recognition of human dignity becomes a shared responsibility, one that must be embraced by individuals, communities, and institutions alike. In a world that often seems divided by conflict, inequality, and prejudice, respecting human dignity is a radical act of compassion and solidarity. It calls for a shift in how we view and relate to others, recognizing that each person is worthy of respect regardless of their circumstances. Upholding human dignity means actively challenging the systems and structures that perpetuate injustice and inequality, while working to build a society in which everyone can live freely, with opportunities for growth and fulfillment. It is only when we fully acknowledge and honor the dignity of every person that we can hope to create a world that is truly just, compassionate, and humane. The legacy of hope and change is one that transcends generations, shaping the course of history and inspiring individuals and communities to strive for a better future. It is a legacy that arises from the collective efforts of those who dare to dream of a world that is more just, compassionate, and inclusive. Throughout history, countless individuals and movements have left behind a legacy of transformation, challenging the status quo and pushing the boundaries of what is possible. Their actions, fueled by hope and a desire for change, have inspired others to continue the fight for justice, equality, and human dignity. This legacy is a testament to the power of perseverance, the strength of unity, and the belief that a better tomorrow is always within reach. Hope is the driving force behind every movement for change. It is the belief that despite the struggles and hardships of the present, a brighter future is possible. Hope is what fuels the determination of those who face adversity, and it is what keeps the flame of resistance burning in the face of oppression. It is the unwavering belief that change is not only necessary but achievable, no matter how difficult the path may seem. This hope is often born out of a deep sense of injustice, a recognition that the world as it is does not reflect the values of fairness, equality, and freedom that should define it. It is in these moments of injustice that hope begins to take root, inspiring individuals to challenge the forces that perpetuate inequality and oppression. The legacy of hope is built upon the actions of those who refuse to accept the world as it is. Throughout history, there have been countless individuals and movements that have dared to dream of a different world, one in which justice prevails and every person is treated with dignity and respect. Leaders such as Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr. are examples of individuals whose actions were driven by hope and a vision of change. They faced enormous challenges, often at great personal cost, yet their belief in a better future never wavered. Their struggles became the foundation for change, and their legacies continue to inspire generations to come. Change is not easy, and it is rarely achieved without sacrifice. Those who work for change often face resistance from those who benefit from the existing system, and the road to progress is often fraught with obstacles. However, change is an essential part of human progress. It is through change that societies evolve, that injustices are addressed, and that individuals are given the opportunity to live more fulfilling lives. The legacy of change is marked by the transformative impact it has on the world, altering the course of history and improving the lives of countless individuals. This change is not always immediate or linear, but it is always driven by the collective efforts of those who believe in the possibility of a better future. This speech draws on Nelson Mandela's themes of unity, justice, equality, democracy, and the importance of human dignity, while emphasizing the need for action and responsibility within the House of Commons. The commitment to justice and equality is not merely an ideal that we speak of in passing. It is the very foundation upon which a just and prosperous society must be built. As I stand before this esteemed gathering in the House of Commons, I am reminded that we, as representatives of the people, hold in our hands the power to shape the future. But with that power comes great responsibility. Our foremost duty is to ensure that justice is not just a word, but a living, breathing reality for every individual in our society. Justice is not selective, and neither should be our commitment to it. It does not rest upon the rich, or the powerful it is for the marginalized, the oppressed, and the voiceless as much as it is for those who are already privileged by their status or wealth. Justice begins with equality. We cannot claim to be a just society if some of our people are left behind, excluded from opportunities and resources simply because of their race, gender, economic background, or beliefs. To truly honor justice, we must ensure that every individual, regardless of their circumstances, is granted the same opportunities, the same protections, and the same rights under the law. The injustices of the past have created deep divisions in our society, but it is within our power to heal those wounds by fostering an environment where equality is not an aspiration but a practice. We must confront the reality that for too long, too many people have been denied their rights. We must ask ourselves, how can we claim to be a society based on justice if the most vulnerable among us are still suffering from the legacy of discrimination, prejudice, and exploitation? The scars of inequality are evident all around us. In our cities, in our schools, in our healthcare systems, and in our workplaces, we see the systemic barriers that prevent too many from reaching their full potential. These barriers are not natural, they are man-made, products of decisions and actions that have been allowed to persist unchecked for far too long. It is time to dismantle these systems of injustice and build a society where the ideals of fairness and equality are reflected not just in our words but in our deeds. This will not be easy. It will require a commitment from all of us, from every sector of society, to make the difficult and often uncomfortable choices that will bring about real change. We must start with education. Education is the great equalizer, the one tool that can lift a person from the depths of poverty to the heights of opportunity. Yet, far too many children in our nation still do not have access to quality education, simply because of where they were born or the circumstances into which they were born. It is a tragedy that so many children, especially from marginalized communities, are denied the chance to learn, to grow, and to achieve. This is not just a failure of policy, it is a failure of moral will. If we are truly committed to justice and equality, we must ensure that every child, regardless of their background, has access to a world-class education. Education is not a privilege for the few, it is a right for all. But education alone is not enough. We must also address the economic inequality that continues to plague so many communities. The wealth gap in our society is staggering, and it grows wider with each passing day. Too many of our citizens are trapped in a cycle of poverty, working long hours for meager wages, while others accumulate vast fortunes without ever having to break a sweat. This is not the vision of a just society. A truly just society is one where the economic resources are distributed equitably, where all individuals have access to the means to support themselves and their families, and where hard work is rewarded with fair compensation. It is time for us to rethink the systems of wealth and power that perpetuate inequality, and to ensure that the benefits of our nation's prosperity are shared by all. The path to justice and equality also requires that we address the disparities in healthcare. The right to health is one of the most fundamental human rights, yet too many people in our country do not have access to the healthcare they need. It is not enough for us to provide care only to those who can afford it. We must ensure that everyone, regardless of their income or background, has access to the care and support they need to live a healthy life. We must invest in our healthcare systems, ensuring that they are accessible, affordable, and equitable for all people, particularly the most vulnerable among us. In our commitment to justice, we must also recognize the importance of safeguarding the rights and freedoms of every individual. Justice means that no person should ever be subject to discrimination, violence, or oppression because of who they are or what they believe. We must work to create a society where every person, regardless of their race, gender, religion, or sexual orientation, feels safe, valued, and respected. We must ensure that our laws protect the rights of all citizens, and that those who seek to harm others are held accountable for their actions. Our commitment to justice and equality must also extend to the global stage. We are part of a world community, and our actions here in this house have far-reaching consequences. As a nation, we must stand in solidarity with those who are oppressed, whether they are facing poverty, discrimination, or violence. We must work to build a world where peace, justice, and equality are not distant dreams, but everyday realities for all people, no matter where they live. Ultimately, the commitment to justice and equality is a lifelong endeavor. It requires persistence, resilience, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths that lie within our society. But if we stand firm in our resolve, if we remain steadfast in our belief that every person deserves to live in a world of fairness and dignity, we will build a future that is truly just and equal for all. This is our duty, our responsibility, and our calling. Let us rise to it together. The power of unity is a force stronger than any individual, any ideology, and any division that seeks to tear us apart. It is through unity that we find our greatest strength, and it is unity that has the potential to transform societies, overcome challenges, and pave the way for a future of peace, justice, and prosperity. When people come together, setting aside their differences to work toward a common goal, they become an unstoppable force capable of achieving the seemingly impossible. As I stand before this August Assembly, I am reminded of the incredible power that resides within all of us when we stand united. Unity is not simply the absence of conflict, it is the presence of collaboration, understanding, and a shared vision. It is not merely the alignment of interests, but the coming together of hearts, minds, and actions for the greater good. True unity transcends the boundaries that often separate us, be it race, religion, class, or geography, and recognizes the common humanity that binds us all. In times of crisis, it is unity that allows us to stand firm in the face of adversity, to rise above our differences, and to move forward with hope and determination. But unity is not an abstract concept. It is something we must actively cultivate and nurture every day. We are living in a world that is increasingly fractured. It is easy to become overwhelmed by the forces of division that seek to sow discord and mistrust. Politics, social media, and even economic systems often drive wedges between communities and create an environment of us versus them. It becomes tempting to focus on the things that make us different, to allow fear and hatred to overshadow the ties that bind us together. But in doing so, we risk losing sight of the most powerful resource we have, each other. The real power of unity lies in our ability to come together, despite our differences, to find common ground even in the most difficult circumstances. The power of unity is evident throughout history. It is in the struggles of those who fought against apartheid, segregation, and colonialism, standing together to challenge the status quo and demand their rights. It is in the victories won through collective action, where individuals from different backgrounds, with different experiences, set aside their differences for a higher cause. Nelson Mandela understood this better than most. His leadership was a testament to the power of unity. Despite the years of imprisonment, despite the hatred and division that permeated his society, he believed in the power of bringing people together. He worked tirelessly to unite people who had been pitted against one another by forces of injustice and hatred, showing that through dialogue, understanding, and shared purpose, even the deepest divides could be bridged. It is through unity that true liberation is found, liberation not just from physical chains, but from the mental and emotional chains that bind us in fear and hatred. Unity does not mean uniformity. It does not require us to erase our differences or to expect everyone to think and act the same. Instead, it celebrates diversity as a strength, recognizing that our different backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences are what make us richer and more resilient as a society. In unity, we find strength in difference. When we listen to each other, when we seek to understand rather than judge, when we open our hearts to the experiences and struggles of others, we build bridges that span the chasms of misunderstanding and prejudice. Unity requires empathy and ability to see beyond ourselves, to recognize the humanity in others, and to work toward the collective good. When we are united, we are not just individuals fighting for our own self-interest, but part of something much larger than ourselves, a movement, a community, a nation. This sense of belonging and shared purpose gives us the strength to endure hardships and to persevere in the face of adversity. In times of crisis, we have seen the power of collective effort. Whether it is communities coming together in the aftermath of natural disasters, workers organizing for better rights, or activists uniting for social justice, we see the incredible power of people working together. When we unite in purpose, we become a force that no power can break. Unity also provides a foundation for peace. It is easy to see division as an inevitable consequence of human nature, but unity offers us an alternative. It allows us to build relationships and create bonds that transcend historical enmities and present conflicts. The power of unity lies not just in what it allows us to achieve, but in what it prevents violence, hatred, and oppression. In a world where so many are torn apart by conflict, the ability to bring people together is perhaps the most precious resource of all. Unity is the antidote to division. It is a pathway to understanding and reconciliation. When we unite, we replace the language of war with the language of peace, and we choose the path of cooperation over confrontation. Unity is not a passive state. It is not enough to merely hope for unity or to talk about it. We must actively work to create it. It requires effort, sacrifice, and a commitment to putting the needs of the collective above personal desires. It means reaching across divides, listening to those whose views differ from our own, and finding common ground in the pursuit of justice and progress. Unity calls for courage, the courage to stand with others, even when it is difficult, even when the odds are against us. It is the courage to believe that together we can overcome the challenges we face and build a future that is fairer, more inclusive, and more compassionate. We must also recognize that unity is not a destination but a continuous journey. It is something that must be nurtured and cultivated over time. The challenges we face today, whether in terms of inequality, environmental degradation, or political polarization, require us to come together in new ways. Unity is not just about coming together in times of ease, it is about standing firm in solidarity during times of struggle. It is about choosing to unite when it is easier to divide, and it is about building the bridges that will allow us to move forward as one. The power of unity is something we must tap into as we face the challenges of our time. The solutions to the problems that divide us lie not in further division, but in the power of coming together. In unity, we find our strength, our resolve, and our hope. The question we must ask ourselves is not whether we can unite, but whether we will choose to do so. The future is in our hands, and through unity, we have the power to shape it. The power of hope and change lies not just in the actions of a few individuals, but in the ability of entire communities to come together and work toward a common goal. Collective action is a powerful force capable of creating transformative shifts in society. When people unite in pursuit of a shared vision, they create a force that is far greater than the sum of its parts. Movements for civil rights, women's rights, labor rights, and environmental justice have all been powered by the collective will of people who refuse to accept the status quo. It is through these movements that change becomes not just a dream, but a reality. The legacy of hope and change is a collective one, born from the efforts of individuals who join together to create a better world. The impact of hope and change is not confined to the people directly involved in movements for justice and equality. It ripples outward, touching the lives of generations to come. The changes brought about by these movements are often institutionalized, enshrined in laws and policies that protect the rights and freedoms of individuals. Civil rights legislation, gender equality laws, and protections for workers and the environment are all examples of the lasting legacy of change. These laws and policies provide a framework for continued progress, ensuring that the gains made by past generations are not lost but built upon. The legacy of hope and change is, therefore, a dynamic one, constantly evolving and expanding as new challenges arise and new generations continue the work of those who came before them. Moreover, the legacy of hope and change is not just about legal or institutional progress, it is also about shifting societal attitudes and norms. The work of social justice movements often involves changing hearts and minds, challenging ingrained prejudices and biases, and fostering a culture of empathy, compassion, and inclusion. This shift in consciousness is a crucial aspect of lasting change, as it creates a society in which the values of equality and justice are not just enshrined in law, but are lived out in everyday interactions. The legacy of change is seen in the ways in which people treat one another, the way communities function, and the way individuals see their role in the broader society. A key aspect of the legacy of hope and change is the recognition that the work is never finished. While significant progress has been made in many areas, there are still many challenges to overcome. Inequality, injustice, and discrimination persist, and the fight for a better future continues. The legacy of hope and change is one of continuity, a reminder that each generation has a responsibility to contribute to the ongoing work of creating a more just and compassionate world. The struggle for equality, human rights, and social justice is ongoing, and it is the duty of each person to ensure that the progress made by those who came before is not reversed but built upon. This legacy also serves as a source of strength in times of difficulty. When faced with challenges, people can look back to the struggles of previous generations and draw inspiration from the victories they achieved. The legacy of hope and change is a reminder that change is possible, even in the face of overwhelming odds. It is a reminder that the power of hope, determination, and collective action can bring about the most profound transformations in society. By remembering the lessons of the past and honoring the sacrifices made by those who fought for a better future, individuals and communities can find the strength to continue working for change. The legacy of hope and change is one that will continue to shape the future. It is a legacy that inspires us to keep pushing forward, to believe in the possibility of a better world, and to take action to make that world a reality. It is a legacy of resilience, of determination, and of the unshakable belief that the future can be better than the present. By continuing the work of those who came before us, and by fostering a culture of hope, solidarity, and justice, we can ensure that the legacy of hope and change endures for generations to come.